Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going on a seriously fascinating journey, one that actually bridges the gap between subatomic physics and practical, clinical breathing techniques. If you, or maybe someone you love, is managing a severe respiratory condition like asthma or COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, understanding what's happening in your body on a microscopic level, it changes everything. I'm going to be your guide today as we break down the complex science of respiration into real, actionable steps to help you heal. Okay, let's dive into this. When you feel breathless, your immediate, intuitive thought is probably, I'm not getting enough oxygen, right? But what if I told you that a lack of oxygen is rarely the actual root of the problem? For decades, we've kind of misunderstood the role of the gases in our lungs. Today, we're going to completely debunk the myth that asthma and COPD are simply a lack of oxygen. Instead, we're introducing the hidden protagonist of your respiratory health, carbon dioxide. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The carbon dioxide paradox. 2. Quantum mechanics of respiration. 3. Anatomy of airway health. 4. The breath emotion loop. 5. Steps for breathing retraining. And finally, number 6, achieving respiratory resilience. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The carbon dioxide paradox. Rethinking the role of CO2. You see, the traditional view of the lungs as just a simple mechanical pump completely misses the chemical brilliance of the body, specifically something called the Bohr effect. Let's talk about hypocapnia, which is a state of low carbon dioxide in your blood. Carbon dioxide is not just a waste gas. It's actually the crucial key that unlocks oxygen from your red blood cells so your tissues can use it. When we chronically overbreathe, taking fast, shallow breaths, we literally blow off too much CO2. This creates hypocapnia. And paradoxically, because you lack CO2, your blood holds on to oxygen tighter, leaving your tissues absolutely starving for it. You become trapped in the state of carbon poverty, and as a defense mechanism, your airways actually tighten up. Let's look at how this plays out differently depending on the condition. For those managing asthma, hypocapnia constricts airways and triggers what's called mast cell degranulation, releasing histamines and causing major inflammation. But for patients managing severe COPD, the problem flips. Because of damaged lungs, CO2 gets trapped, leading to hypercapnia, which is way too much CO2. Recent studies show that this severe hypercapnia increases airway smooth muscle contractility via a specific genetic pathway called caspase-7-mediated miR-133A ROA signaling. I know, that's a mouthful, but it's basically a complex biological domino effect that causes your airways to spasm and tighten. So, whether it's the hypocapnia of asthma or the hypercapnia of severe COPD, unbalanced CO2 is directly causing your respiratory distress. Moving on to Section 2, Quantum Mechanics of Respiration, the subatomic rules governing your breath. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that to truly understand how gas exchange works so incredibly efficiently, we have to realize that classical biology and physics alone actually can't explain the speed and precision of human breathing. Look at quantum tunneling. You have an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase that manages CO2 in your blood. It works so unbelievably fast that it breaks classical speed limits. It achieves this by allowing subatomic particles to literally tunnel through energy barriers they shouldn't realistically be able to cross. Then there's quantum entanglement. When you inhale, your hemoglobin has to essentially choose to bind with life-saving oxygen instead of toxic carbon monoxide. And it makes this choice because the electrons of the oxygen and iron actually become entangled, creating this sort of quantum gatekeeper that prioritizes oxygen. This subatomic magic isn't just fun science trivia. It matters immensely for you as a patient. Because in order for these incredibly delicate, quantum-coherent electron transfers to happen smoothly, your body needs the perfect biochemical environment. And what dictates that environment? The correct balance of carbon dioxide. Master your CO2, and you literally optimize the quantum machinery that's keeping you alive. Section 3. Anatomy of airway health. Nasal breathing and physical structure. Let's zoom back out from the quantum realm to something you can feel right now in your own body. Because all that biochemical perfection relies heavily on how you physically move air. Notice how proper tongue posture means your tongue rests firmly on the roof of your mouth. It turns out, mewing isn't just some viral internet trend. It naturally seals the oral airway, enforcing nasal breathing. When you breathe through your mouth, your tongue drops to the floor, and over time this actually disrupts your facial structure, narrows your airway, and practically guarantees that you're going to overbreathe and disrupt those precious CO2 levels. So why is the nose so absolutely crucial? Well, behind your nasal cavity are the paranasal sinuses, and they act as a reservoir for a literal miracle molecule called nitric oxide. When you breathe through your nose, you pull this nitric oxide deep into your lungs. It sterilizes incoming air, fighting off the pathogens that trigger asthma, and it dilates your blood vessels, which massively enhances oxygen uptake. Honestly, breathing through your nose is an absolute anatomical necessity for protecting your airway. So, the crucial point is Section 4, the breath emotion loop, how anxiety and breathing feed each other. Your breathing is deeply intertwined with how your brain interprets these biochemical changes. And here is the vicious cycle that traps so many patients. It starts with anxiety, which activates your fight or flight nervous system. You start to hyperventilate, which, as we learned earlier, causes hypocapnia, dropping your CO2. This creates very real biochemical symptoms like dizziness and chest tightness. But here's the trap. Your brain's fear centers, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula, amplify these completely harmless changes into perceived life-threatening crises. This ramps up your fear, which causes you to hyperventilate even more. It gets worse, because chronic hyperventilation actually rewires your brain to perceive a totally normal pause in breathing as a threat. This is exactly why conventional anxiety treatments can sometimes miss the mark if they ignore respiratory physiology. Think about it. If you tell a trauma survivor or a severe asthmatic who is in a panic to take a big deep breath, you might actually backfire. A massive gulp of air drops CO2 even further, triggering severe hypervigilance. We definitely need a different approach here. Section 5, Steps for Breathing Retraining. Practical Methods from Buteyko. All right, we are going to pivot from theory to a highly actionable roadmap. To manage severe respiratory conditions naturally, we first have to measure exactly where you are. And we do this using something called the control pause. Instead of relying on subjective feelings of anxiety or breathlessness, the control pause is a fully objective clinical tool from the Buteyko breathing method. Here's how it works. You take a normal breath in, a normal breath out, pinch your nose, and count the seconds until you feel the first distinct desire to breathe. This directly measures your nervous system's regulation and your current tolerance to carbon dioxide. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual exercise you can do. To manage poor CO2 tolerance and really help patients improve their airway health naturally, we use a Buteyko exercise simply called steps. You start by walking with your mouth closed. Then you exhale normally, pinch your nose, and walk for 5 to 15 steps while holding your breath. Once you feel a moderate sense of air hunger, you let go and recover by breathing calmly again through your nose. By inducing light air hunger under a physical load, you are slowly resetting your brain's faulty smoke alarm, basically teaching your chemoreceptors to tolerate healthy gas levels without spasming your airways. The ultimate goal of this daily retraining is to return your body back to this baseline right here, 8 to 12. That is the normal physiological rate of breaths per minute at rest. When you practice the Buteyko method consistently, your breathing naturally transitions back to being light, deep, low, and slow. Finally, Section 6, Achieving Respiratory Resilience. Bringing it all together. To truly manage severe conditions, you have to bring all of this together into one cohesive picture. The Buteyko steps stabilize your CO2. That stabilized CO2 optimizes your airway anatomy. And an open, healthy airway allows for the perfect subatomic quantum gas exchange. As this quote so brilliantly illustrates, mastering your breath is ultimately about changing how you appraise physical sensations. When you consciously choose to relax your breathing muscles during a moment of breathlessness, you're sending direct inhibitory signals straight to your amygdala. You literally break the breath emotion loop, and you reclaim control over your body and your mind. So I leave you with this thought today. From the quantum entanglement of electrons in your blood, all the way up to the profound psychological relief of taking a calm, silent breath through your nose, could mastering the subatomic particles of your very next breath be the actual key to unlocking true peace of mind? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now take a gentle breath in, a gentle breath out, and I'll see you next time.